An anonymous YouTube channel springs up. Mysterious footage gets leaked. An alien interrogation appears to have been made public. But why? Who was Skinny Bob, the extraterrestrial? Was he real? And can he tell if he's being watched from afar? Join Metaphysical for a show that's out of this world. As if the UFO community didn't have enough problems with, being considered credible and things, they had to go ahead and name this guy Skinny Bob, which helps
Right.
their case so well.
I know.
Seeing the footage of Skinny Bob, it definitely appears to be the most realistic looking footage of an alien creature of any video that I've seen out there. The way his eyes looked, the way that his head looks, his body, those details seem to be more accurate than a lot of the other footage that I feel like I've seen. And
Right. And there's one point where he's blinking, which is interesting. I've heard a lot of people discount the whole thing, or a lot of people, prop it up. Most of the CGI people that I've heard talk about this say that's not CGI. That's not
yeah,
CGI. Some people say animatronics, but no, it's not animatronics. Seems a little excessive for animatronics.
could it be like a little guy in a suit or a little child in a suit?
It could be. Yeah, it could be. Could be something like that.
Even the way it moves looks to be like a little bit of an 8-year-old skinny child.
I think what's more interesting to me actually are people arguing, actually, because arguing basically
Yeah.
tells us that humans are screwed and we're in the dark, that we don't know truth from reality, and we have no way to understand truth from reality unless somebody actually tells us so. That's where I go to with these things, right? It's either fake or it's real, but people don't know which one of those it is, so they argue over it. And that's the big problem that we have, in that, where are people's truth lie detectors
Yeah.
internally? Where are people's ability to sense into things, to get out of thinking and to be able to use feeling to understand what's truth and what's reality? That's what this culture is lacking right now. And we're getting like hoodwinked bad because of that.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because that actually, we'll be looking at some of the comments that occurred on the YouTube channel after these videos were uploaded. It's pretty interesting. It's actually right along the lines of what you just mentioned.
Okay. All
So,
right.
if for those of you that don't know, in May of 2011, 4 YouTube videos were uploaded by a user named Ivan0135 that showed footage of this alien being that we're calling Skinny Bob interrogated by authorities. One video claimed its purpose was declassification and dissemination through the internet and media. They had to remain anonymous to protect their sources. The YouTube video's contents were taken from 7 videotapes with material recorded between 1942 and 1969. So from the video, we actually have some quotes here. Quote, from the first contact in 1942, a series of diplomatic visits to discuss matters of mutual concern were planned. Under the Treaty 2304, these meetings would take place in secrecy. A limited number of special agents would escort visitors, and they would only meet high-ranking officers. And now we've got to assume by visitors, they're talking about the aliens here. According to the document 072E, at the meeting of 1961, there was an incident involving 3 subjects due to the violation of the agreement by the officers at the military base, when they discovered that their arrival was being filmed with a hidden device without their consent. Under Treaty 2304, the meetings would be confidential and filming or taking photographs would not be allowed, which is why that was, an issue. After the incident, the treaty was revised. Okay, the large headed, black eyed alien was quickly dubbed Skinny Bob by the internet. There have been no attempts to truly debunk the video or prove its editing or CGI. To be more fair, I'd say people have attempted to do that, but I don't feel like any of those arguments have been strong enough to completely discount the video, you know?
Yeah, wait, wait. I've gotten one argument by actually a number of different people. If you look at the video, he's wearing a turtleneck, and people say there's no way that's real because he could not get his head through that hole. There's your evidence that is faked.
Yeah, but why does he have to put his shirt on like this? Right?
It could be Velcro. It could be buttoned up the back.
Be
I mean,
Velcro. Everybody knows the aliens invented Velcro.
It was
Slicked out.
skinny. Yeah.
Very skinny body. Well, anyway, the channel responded to comments on left on the first videos. Quote, "The material is an edited compilation of the documents that we have. Your opinion and the conclusion you draw from this material do not depend on us. Maybe you are looking in the wrong direction. You are the ones who reject this material." Kind of like you were saying, right, John?
Right.
Okay, sources will not be revealed. Information that may involve any agency or people will not be disclosed. There is not any reference which may link the material to any organization that is working today in the material exposed. However, you are speculating and making conjectures about its origins. The material does not belong to any film, video game, television series, or other commercial products which have been revealed to date or which are currently in production. No one who is out of this may prove to be the owner of this material. No one who is out of this can prove he is in possession of the original material. The revelation of further material will depend on the events and people. You are the ones who create your own misinformation. There it is.
There it is. That's exactly it right there. You are the ones that do that because you don't know how to sense or feel whether it's fake or not. And that's really where that's where we are right now. That's really where we are, which is a huge problem for going forward as a people. Huge, huge.
One other comment here, it said, "Just because my head is huge doesn't mean I can't slip it through this galactic sweater."
Exactly. One of the most fascinating ones, the one where you have 3 or 4 aliens walking along and then look right at the camera, which is really interesting. Really, really interesting stuff. There are a lot of claims on YouTube, the internet in general, of there's an alien, or these people are aliens and giving information, or this or that, and nearly every single one of them fall flat. Like when we remote view this stuff, like the amount of hoaxes and just fanciful junk that people throw around is huge. Most stuff's just nonsense.
Yeah,
And
like
we can
like when catching the aliens walking behind the car on your outside camera or whatever. Like there's been a few videos like that where you and I have looked at them and you've been like, "Oh, this is totally a hoax."
Yeah, so it's stuff's pervasive, and then the internet culture, YouTube and social media culture is so limited and very quick as far as a determination on what it is goes, that it's people are just going down the wrong path here. People are just going down the wrong path in how they identify what's real and what's not. We go back to like Channy Project. The Channy Project was a super collider out of Africa, which the story is that it was claimed that there was contact and communication with another dimension before the year 2000, right? Y2K. And the super collider people who were working there were talking back and forth via text in the super collider somehow with this other civilization that was like a mirror of ours, right? And then this stuff, the story behind that is that this stuff came to the desk of an intelligence officer with the notation on it: declassify this, no, not declassify it, but push this out to internet forums in order to see how people react, right?
Mm.
How do people react to this? What do they do with it? So that was like the gist behind that particular story. And so, like the Skinny Bob stuff, when you go down that path, this could be one of those things, whether it's real or not, on how to see the direction people will react. And it's kind of pointing to that in that guy's comments, Ivan's comments there.
I guess it really comes down to that conversation, which is how do human beings discern when information is being put in front of them? In your opinion, John, what needs to change in order for human beings to be open-minded and more able to process things like these videos out there on the internet? Because this is not going to be the last time something like this happens. In
Right.
fact, I think, people talk about this thing called like disclosure or like full disclosure, which when is full disclosure going to happen? Like people are always talking about that, which I think is kind of comical because it's like never actually. And it will be natural, not necessarily this massive shock that we idealize as being this disclosure event that's going to happen. It will be almost be like we're in a place where we're ready for that in the first place, and it's coming out and we're just kind of like accepting of it and moving on with our lives. Not that it won't be shocking, just that it will be more a part of where we're at already. But how do we get there is the question. Like, what do you think needs to happen?
Right. Well, first off, it's like I don't think in terms of having somebody else tell me what is and what isn't. And people look to the authorities, and the authorities have been abusing across the board, 100%, and so much so that people have a syndrome. Right? It's terrible to look to an authority for information in this world we live in now. You should never be doing that. So when you get to the whole UFO UAP thing, the psychological operation around that, they're trying to pull people away from UFO into UAP because UFO has a ton of baggage. UFO has abductions around it, it has aliens around it, it's got all sorts of other stuff that they don't want people to think about. That's why they're turning it to UAP. They're trying to take control of the narrative there on that front so that they can manipulate the information as it comes out. And this is obvious. So obvious should tell you not to trust any disclosure from them. A person can go and see UFOs whenever they like. A person can have telepathic contact whenever they like. A person can learn remote viewing or any other skill like that, work with other people, and understand the reality of these things. A person can look through, I don't know, thousands upon thousands of research, independent researchers that have made their material public on this stuff that go back to the 1950s, 40s, and see the patterns within them to understand this is true if you want to go the logical path, right? To sit there and wait for an authority figure to feed you is wrong, 100% wrong. And we have to take that back. We have to take that back ultimately, because we are burying ourselves in this situation and allowing somebody else to completely, utterly control what information we get. We're allowing ourselves to be shackled. We are allowing ourselves to be shackled here, which is ridiculous. And it's across the board. It isn't just with UFO stuff. It is across the board. Now, when you get Skinny Bob show up, and you get this really interesting series of enticing videos of this strange looking creature, and with the government and the authorities not having told you that these things exist, most people, of course, are going to go, no, 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 that's impossible. The government hasn't told me about this yet. And if it were real, I would know because they would have told me.
Or because I'm an intelligent person and I know these things.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I never look up in the sky, but
My
hey.
academic friends in Boston told me that's not true. and
Right.
they go to MIT and they're tenured professors there.
Right. So
Okay.
again, he is always looking for somebody else to tell you. Always, man. When we have the faculties in ourselves to know, ultimately.
I actually think in explaining that you maybe unintentionally touched on exactly what I think is going to change. I think how humanity is going to change is there is going like the biggest impact to humanity is going to be the realization that sources of information have been lying to them for a very long time. And the shock from that will send them and will put them in such a state that they're finally willing to start looking at and accept new information that's coming out and the reality, some of the realities that are out there. 90% of the phenomena that we see is real, and the other 10% are hoaxes. That's still a massive amount of stuff that we're
Right.
rejecting on the daily because we just can't accept it. We
Right.
just refuse to accept it,
Right.
you know?
Well, I mean, one of the curious things about people is that they're very selective. So a person who doesn't believe in remote viewing, you can say, you can talk to them about remote viewing and they could say, well, the CIA declassified that and the air report said that it doesn't really work, it doesn't really do anything. Okay. So then you can come back to them later and say, do you trust the CIA? And they would say, oh, God, no. No, never. Why would I do that? But hey, you just said that you trusted the CIA in a report, right? That's the same with media, right? So people will do the same thing.
Some new sources of information need to come forth. I was thinking about starting a podcast called Metaphysical that we could
Yeah.
we could start to try
Oh,
to
that's a
do
good
that. I
idea.
don't know. Yeah, maybe it's a good idea. But
Metaphysical.
yay, sweet. You like Superman over there.
Yeah.
Dang. Sweet shirt. If you're into merch, check out the awesome t-shirts designed by yours truly. Back to Skinny Bob here. What is the deal? What is this thing?
This is an intelligence operation, basically.
It's got
This is,
intelligence vibes.
yeah, it does. And who knows if it's Russian or not? I mean, that's just a easy way to just point the finger in a different direction. It doesn't really matter, actually, when you get down to it. It doesn't matter who was the one that leaked it. It was actually a while ago that we remote viewed Skinny Bob. I was like doing the Midnight in the Desert show, and Heather Wade, she took over for Art Bell, and I was kind of like the resident remote viewer on that show, and I go on frequently.
That's
And she
awesome.
wanted to know about it, right? She wanted to know if that was real or not. And previous to that, this was probably like, what was it, 2017, 16 or something. We hadn't looked at it before that. And so I was like, how come I hadn't looked at that? It's so enticing. And I don't think it had spread that wide at that point. So we set about doing a project on this to understand the reality of it. And my first impressions when I saw it was like, I didn't know which way to go with it. It looks so realistic, but there's so much fakery. Yeah,
Lots of
just
hoaxes and things. Yeah.
right. But from a remote viewing perspective, you're talking about multiple blind remote viewers on a specific tasking that is basically to describe what this is. The viewers can go any direction, right? They can go the direction of manipulation of film, which goes into digital manipulation. They can talk about that stuff if it's fake from that side. They could go into a person in a suit, right? Like a mascot, or
Sure.
these types of metaphors, and playing around, stuff like that. They can take all these different paths to tell us that it's fake. Instead, what they did was describe a subject that was very stressed out, a real physical subject that was very stressed out, that had a ton of emotional pain, Yeah, emotional pain as well as some physical pain because the subject was not getting what it needed physically.
When you say things that it needed, are you talking about things like certain oxygen levels or certain pressures or things like that that its body is in need of, or what exactly?
So there was something about the skin with this
Yeah.
subject. It was like the skin had to be kept within like a container around it. Otherwise, it begins to dry out and becomes very painful. It begins to lose some type of oil or something, or it gets a buildup of something that has to be like it's got to be in a situation where it's more covered, um, and not exposed the way that it was feeling exposed.
Hmm.
I'd be like, we didn't get CGI. That would have been very apparent. We didn't get animatronics. We didn't get a person in a suit. We didn't get anything like that. All the data went specifically to describing this being, and some viewers are even calling it an alien or a gray alien, that it was in a state of physical, very high level physical and emotional stress, right? So this thing had been captured through one of the events where their ships were taken down, right? It was sort of like an event that was created in order to create another link into humans, and it was in a sense a sacrifice
Hmm.
by those beings to sacrifice poor old skinny Bob. There's an aspect that is slightly amphibian within the genetics
Huh.
and frog like,
Yeah.
right? That's what we would compare it to, that we were seeing with our data, that it needed to be, well, it needed to be in a pond. It
Mm.
was like give it a lily pad in a pond, it probably would have been okay. But no, there was this aspect where frog skin is very sensitive, right? And
Yeah.
there's a
Okay.
certain environment that it needs, and that's kind of what
Mm.
Skinny Bob needed. And it also sort of fed in a way through its skin, like it received nutrients and stuff through its skin, almost like chlorophyll as well, like plants. So there was this connection, this link with plants too, which is very curious. One of the interesting things that so when we remote view these types of beings, sometimes we will do a process called consciousness mapping, and that is basically to get into the head and or the psyche and try to understand the subject deeper. It's not something we do all the time, but for Skinny Bob we did do that. All of the thoughts, if you can call them thoughts, all of the feelings, if you can call them that, were along the lines of, "Oh no, I'm stuck. Oh no, like I'm
Yeah.
running.
I'm
Yeah,
never getting out of here.
I'm never getting out of here." And the subject was very very down, very depressed, like
Mm.
emotionally very depressed because this subject did have some type of emotional response to it. It was just somewhat dark. The other thing that happened too is that when Skinny Bob, when we go into the psyche, if a subject has a broader awareness than just the average human, then a subject can recognize that there is another mind interfacing with it. And so Skinny Bob recognized that, and was at first like okay with it, right? Skinny Bob was okay with it at first,
You mean
but
someone
we
remote
kept,
viewing him?
yes, remote viewing him because he was recognizing that we were viewing him, that somebody, a mind was interfacing with it. Now, you're talking about what this video is claimed to be from, what, 1942 or something,
Right.
the 1940s. So you're talking about a time difference from our time to the past, and a being in the past recognizing that something in the future is like connecting with it. And this is where you get into this thing that can be mind blowing for people, in that there is no time. Time does not exist when you
Mm.
get to the level of quantum and you get to the level of mind. What you work with in remote viewing, like when we remote view something in the past or the future, we become part of that event.
Yep.
We, I mean, you go there, you experience it, you become part of it, right? Things, if they have awareness, can interact with you from that time frame. So he was okay with it at first. I kept sending viewers in and I viewed it myself, but the certain point, he started to say stuff like, "Oh, it's you again. Why do you keep bothering me?" Like, this is data. Like, you're talking about blind remote viewing and you're doing a consciousness map, and the subject is actually talking back to you and saying stuff like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you bothering me? Quit bothering me." You
Just let
again?
me be just let me be here and depressed
Right.
in this little cell room.
Exactly. Right. What happened was there's something you can do. There's a technique, and aliens will use this technique to bounce people out. Right? Humans can do the same thing, but a lot of humans don't know how to do it. But if you can focus on a scene, whatever you want, something you've seen, you can make it up. Nature scenes are nice. That's what Skinny Bob was doing. So he would focus on a nature scene, so much so that the viewer would automatically go to the nature scene and start describing that, unless you knew that you were getting, like, pushed off. So there are techniques around that kind of thing when you're remote viewing, but that's a very simple way to bounce somebody. And so he started to bounce the viewers, right, that I was sending. There were no other viewers that had viewed this before, right? Because otherwise we likely would have run into getting bounced in the beginning. In my world, I think that any remote viewer would be going after this to remote view, but I guess I was wrong. It might be because a lot of viewers don't have the operational capacity that I have as far as like teams go and stuff like that, since I come from operations as opposed to hobby land. So eventually, Skinny Bob, looking at what happened to him, he just died. He died in captivity. He died while he was captive. So if you see the other videos, you've got these meetings with these other beings, and that was basically Skinny Bob was basically the setup for that and the development of, I wouldn't say a treaty necessarily, because a treaty would imply maybe something a little more equal, or we won't step over this line if you don't step over that line. But when you get right down to it, there's nothing that the humans could have done as far as, stepping over a line or signing a treaty with them otherwise, because they could do what they want with their technology and understanding.
What were the purpose of those meetings? Do you know? What is the outcome of this, I wonder?
When we looked at, those beings and what they were associated with, the three or four of them that are walking in that one video, when
Yeah.
we looked at that specifically, that goes into like the deals that were made with the earlier presidents, like Eisenhower on up, probably till before Kennedy. I don't know how many of those guys actually knew that this was going on, but there were deals that were made until humans basically recognized that these deals are bad deals for us. What we've seen with this is that the deals were along the lines of, look, we want to come in and we want to be able to take people because we want to look at their genetics.
Yeah.
We want to take genetics. We want to look at genetics, and we'll be okay with it. We won't do bad things to them. And in exchange, we'll give you, the military industrial complex, access to certain technology. It's like, that blender that's been sitting in the backyard on our planet for, 20 years, bring that over. Junk, garbage, right?
Yeah. Nothing that would actually allow them to
Compete
advance
with
very
them,
much.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The deals were like that. But part of the deal was that the military would receive like a list of the people from these guys, of the ones that they've been looking at and taking.
And
And
abducting and doing
yeah,
experiments on and whatever.
exactly. Exactly. Which they did and didn't receive. And what these aliens were doing were way beyond what the treaty even said. And so that is where the humans started to get like, are these guys aren't like who they say they are. So that meeting you have there would have been one of those meetings that were like with military people or the industrial complex, not with politicians. You got to remember, like, politicians are people who basically exist in a political space for a limited amount of time, for the most part, not always. It shouldn't be forever. But see, those people aren't lifers to a degree, like military is and industry is. They're lifers. That stuff is not going to be shared with the political side for the most
Right.
part, right?
Right.
A lot of them realize, a lot of the humans realize that no, this is not good. They're doing things like they're not giving us lists anymore, and they're just doing whatever they want, which they can.
Do you think that humans were able to develop technology pretty well from the proverbial blenders that they were shown from the aliens?
Yeah, I think so. But I don't know if it's enough to be able to really compete with them on a high level. What I actually always found interesting was in remote viewing the the way radar was used to take down some of these craft.
Mm.
Like we spoke about in the Battle of LA, that standing wave, which can shut down an electromagnetic platform. How is it that these guys in their ships didn't foresee that? Or did they allow that? It could have been an allowance of that to happen, and that's the way some of the technology could have been exchanged. You
Hmm.
know, you've got, well, let's just give them the ships that aren't so great, the ones that like can't like repel an electromagnetic attack, so that we always, have some kind of hold over them,
Right.
right? And we'll let them take those ships out, right?
If they have all of this technology, why are they so interested in genetic research on humans?
Genetics and DNA is the gold in the whole universe. You have to understand.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it comes down to. Like anytime we look at alien species and what they're doing with other planets and other beings, is always about genetics. Remember that one thing that we viewed in the one episode where we're viewing something that was found in Antarctica, and it was like that big, it was a whistleblower that was an operator, and a team was sent to investigate that thing that was sticking out of the ice. And they get to
Oh,
that thing, right? And they it's freezing outside. They go inside, the door just like slides when they come up to it. They go inside, and it's like ambient 70 degrees, and there are all those hieroglyphs and stuff that are glowing green in the walls of this object ship. They don't know what it is, right? When we remote viewed that, what was the intention of the subjects that put that ship there? It was about the frequency of genetics that they were specifically looking for, that they could take, slice and dice to create new species to fold into themselves of these unique genetic combinations to make themselves more powerful. So when you get to a point where you are a highly advanced civilization, you are going to begin to craft your genetics and create beings with very specific genetics that you could use. It's like gold. If you find something new and unique that no one else has found, that's gold.
so they've been mining genetics from people for a really long time.
Right. We're a resource, just like a cow is a resource to us, or a crop of corn is a resource to us. We are a
Mhm.
resource to them on that front. This is literally just one instance of one of these aliens being captured as well, because we've seen, I mean, it's like you had on Rise, Ben was interviewing, what was his name, with all the UFO crashes.
Michael Schratt.
Yeah, excellent, amazing interview,
Yeah.
and amazing like book that guy's written. He's just listing out these crashes, and a lot of these are just 100% real. And how many times in these crashes did they collect bodies,
Yeah.
alive and dead? Right. This happens a lot. So yeah, there are a lot of skinny bobs out there in captivity. Free the skinny bobs.
Free Skinny Bob needs to be a t-shirt. I think a lot of people can pick up on his emotional state when they look at those videos, because a lot of people's reaction to those videos are they feel bad for him.
And that's good. We have basic human empathy and compassion, right? And that's good. When we
Right.
look at it with remote viewing, we see this other side of like, well, they were here to manipulate us because they look at us as cattle, right?
Yeah.
But the humans got one with their pointy sticks, you know?
Well, you guys, hope you enjoyed this episode on the Metaphysical podcast. We had yet to cover the Skinny Bob videos just because there's just so much to cover. And we'd really like to hear what you guys think about this whole thing. And if you have any other outstanding questions that were not answered in this video, please leave your comment below and we'll see what we can do. Get back to you. If you like this episode and want more, please consider supporting our work by pledging on our website, themetaphysical.tv.
Yeah, with your help, we can make more episodes, more merch, which Rob designs himself, and more exclusive videos.
Yeah, like videos on ancient history, mysterious legends, strange space phenomena, paranormal events, unbelievable cryptids, and amazing experiences you'll have to see to believe.
And you can also get a bag of delicious metaphysical coffee if you want your mornings to be interstellar.
And remember to like and subscribe to help the channel grow as well. And with that, we hope you thought this episode was out of this world.